So there comes a time in some men's lives where you get an email from YouTube and it's basically saying,
Is it dead?
and so then you hop on YouTube and go to your creator account and you look at the last time you uploaded a video, and then you realize, oh my God, it was over 200 days ago. And you think to yourself, have I really been that busy that I haven't uploaded in over 200 days? Yeah, the answer is yes. I have been extremely busy lately, so kind of my hobbies got thrown on the back burner there, but things are calming down a little bit, so I'm excited to get back into making some more content and some more tutorials and stuff. And I figure what better way to jump back in than to do a project I've been wanting to do for a long time and make a really freaking big sword.
All right, so like always, we're going to start in the slicer, kind of show you guys what I did here. So this is after I have basically cut it all up and put it all into one 3MF file. And I do not honestly remember where I got this file from. I have had it on my hard drive for a very long time. I'm talking like 2 or 3 years before I actually got around to print it. I want to say it was either Nico Industries, maybe Yosh Studios. There are plenty of these files out there. I will link, try to link a free one down below that you guys can find. And there's some other if you look on CG Trader or whatever as well. One thing you want to look for when you're looking for files is to try to find ones that have these holes that run through them, because those are holes where you can throw a dowel rod in for support, and that goes a long way in giving kind of a backbone to these really long, really big pieces. So definitely look for something like that, because I know not all of them do. Okay, so basically what did I do here? So when you print these, I have a bamboo. I printed these on my P1S and my P1P in PETG, but basically I went ahead and sliced all these up and then oriented them in a way that they would fit on my build plates, but also in a way that the layer lines would be printed lengthwise instead of up and down. Like if I, like this piece here, for example, if I had rotated it and printed it stacking up, A, it would be too tall, I'd have to cut it again, but B, the layer lines would stack up like this, right? Kind of like, in that goes the length of the sword, which makes it that a big fragile point, a big area that it could potentially break, right? Especially when you have a lot of weight on those layer lines. So I oriented everything sideways so that the layer lines print like this, which gives it a lot of strength. If you were to grab here and bend, it's going to be a lot more stable with the layer lines stacked like this long ways. Okay. So that's why everything's oriented this way. You're going to have to kind of do this however your print bed is, you know, for your individual printer. It's probably not going to come pre-sliced for every single printer. So this did take a little bit of a time to go through and do it, but I just used the in-slicer slicing tool. It's really not that complicated. So I just kind of put it on there and then, you know, cut it how I wanted it, how it would fit. And I mean, that was really it. Biggest thing when you're doing all that slicing and stuff, especially if you're using the in tool or the in slicer tool, there's some details on this. Not a whole lot, but you want to try to avoid cutting right through the middle of details. So you can see like over here on this guy, how I kind of cut right below this little line here. Because if I had cut through here instead, it just makes it more of a hassle to get through there and fix, right? So cut it on the smooth parts if you can. Try to avoid cutting through details. One thing I did want to note that I did as well was instead of printing the handle vertically, I went ahead and cut the handle in half, right? And so we've got, you can see the grooves in here for a dowel rod as well. Also, the handle being printed with the layer lines from side to side like this will make it significantly stronger and get rid of that point of failure. Basically, the handle gets wrapped, so it's not a big deal putting that all back together. These are just little bolt ends that go into the sword. And then these are Materia, and they're printed. These generally came out as like an oval. I did cut those in half as well for easy printing and easy assembly into the actual finished product, which we'll get to a little bit later. But that is kind of how I did it, guys. I did go for a little extra strength on my settings with this. So I did 3 wall loops pretty much everywhere, but only 6% gyroid infill on most stuff. You can see that there's a few things that were a little bit different. I did use variable layer heights for the Materia because they're rounded and I didn't want to do a whole lot of sanding on them. So that's pretty simple. Same thing with the handles and the buttons. Basically everything that has a rounded surface, I use the variable layer height on just to make my life a little easier. These areas that were down by the handles. So the handle, I did 8 wall loops. And that wasn't necessarily to make it stronger. It does obviously help to make it stronger, but that was mainly to make sure that the handle had enough weight to kind of counterbalance all the weight that was going to be past it, right? I didn't want a super blade heavy sword, so the handle has more weight. When I was slicing this up, I meant to do it on this whole lower section really of the sword, and I just didn't get around to it. So like this one I would have done it on, and this one I would have done it on. These two go together, and then this piece back here I would have done it on as well. I didn't think about it until it was too late, so I tried to make it up by just making the handle a little heavier. It's certainly not weighted super well, but this did help a little bit. Otherwise, it would be super blade heavy. So keep that in mind. It obviously takes more material, but I think worth it in the end. So fully sliced, I want to say this took like 2.5, 3 rolls maybe of PETG the way that I sliced it up. And this is a full size Buster sword. I think it comes out to be 5 foot 10 inches. So it is massive. That's my recommendations for the slicer. That's how I did it. We'll hop into the garage and get started on the project. Before we jump into the garage and get started on this project, I want to give a big shout out to today's sponsor, PCBWay. Originally known for their customizable PCBs for all your electronics projects, they also offer a lot of other services such as on-demand 3D printing. They offer a whole bunch of materials from resin, nylon, PLA, ABS, stainless steel, titanium. I mean, pretty much everything that you can think of. Great for prototyping or for production, or if you're just trying to get those really special parts printed for your next cool project. PCBWay also offers lots of surface finishes for your prints, from spray painting to high gloss to matte, electroplating for those really metallic parts like Iron Man masks, and also detail sanding if you don't want to do it yourself when you get them. Super cool service that they offer here, guys. Definitely check it out, and a huge thanks again to PCBWay for sponsoring this video.
Okay, so you can see I've got all the major pieces laid out on the table here. They're not arranged or anything. We've got to do a little bit of cleanup. There's a lot of supports that need to come off of these, and then we're going to have to clean it up a little bit, you know, get any extra support or brim material, and then basically put it all together, thread it through all of our little dowels and everything, and then weld it together. So first we're going to do cleanup. Let's just get all these supports off. Very nice. Okay, that really wasn't too bad. I just used some needle nose pliers to get some of the supports that I couldn't get out that were in there a little deeper. Most of them came out super easy. And then I used a deburring tool just to clean up some of the areas where the brim got left behind, just to make post-processing easier down the road. So now we are into assembly. So I have to put this whole thing together. I'll show you guys the dowels that I got for this project, and kind of how that goes together. I hope I got enough of them. If I didn't, we got to make a run to the hardware store. But we're going to essentially lay it out as a skeleton, thread it through the dowels, and then that's where we go to start welding it to put it all together so that it starts to hold form, and then we can really get into the post-processing part. So the dowels I got are these 1/4-inch oak dowels I got from the hardware store, and they're just going to slide right in through these holes in the blade, just to give it a little extra support in that. Hopefully it won't be too heavy to break it. You won't really know until you put it all together. And then for the handle, I actually went ahead and got a metal 1/4-inch. This is just a threaded dowel. I'm not going to use the threads, but that's just going to slide in between the handle and get pinched there to give the handle some more support, because that is where most of the weight is going to be focused on. And also to give the handle a little bit more weight so that it's not so blade heavy, and it won't be balanced really midline by the handle, but this will help a little bit, I hope, right? But really going to give it a lot of support. So that is the plan with that. This will have to get measured, and then we'll have to cut this down with just like a hacksaw, and hopefully that works well. All right, so first things first, we have to get this thing arranged, kind of like a puzzle, put it together, and make sure that I have enough dowels for all the supports and everything. So this is going to be a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle. It should be pretty simple in theory. I didn't pay attention and didn't mark anything when I was slicing things up, but you know, how hard could it be, right? All right, that is definitely how it goes together. Cool, so let's put the dowel rods in and hope that A, they're long enough, and B, everything lines up and all these holes printed round. Yeah, so we're coming up just a little short on this guy here, so I'll have to cut. I'll probably not like weld those together or anything. We'll just kind of leave them in there freelancer style. We'll see how that plays out. Fortunately, they didn't really make these any longer than this. All right, we're going handheld here for a second, but the dowels are almost long enough. There's a couple little spots like right up in here where it doesn't totally reach. I think it stops like about here. So I'm gonna have to get another rod, just one more, I think, and just cut it down to size to fill up those little gaps through here. Otherwise, all of this is pretty well reinforced through here. The one thing that I don't love about this particular design is that where these little stones are supposed to go in here, it doesn't go all the way through. I think that the idea is so that you can kind of, use translucent PLA or translucent filament, and you can put lights in there so they glow. And so you don't want obviously a pole going through it if it's going to glow. I should have gone through in the slicer and probably added a negative space there because mine aren't going to be glowing. They're not going to be transparent. So the thing that I'm seeing is that this hole here kind of ends like right about here inside there. So all of the weight of the sword, there's not one one true support dowel that goes all the way through the whole thing. That's going to end, the metal one is basically going to go through the handle and then kind of end right here. And then there will be side ones that will start here and go up the sides, but the middle one will skip from here to like here and then keep going. So hopefully it's enough support. I think that it still will be. It was designed like this for a reason, I imagine. I would just like it if there was a little more support that went right through the middle, especially since mine aren't going to be transparent and it's just going to be covered up. But I do need to get another dowel, and then we'll start gluing everything together, and then I'll start welding everything together. All right, so now that we know everything fits together the right way, we're going to go ahead and start gluing stuff in. I'm going to start with just putting the dowel rods into the base, and then we're kind of going to like Tetris it. We're just going to stack. I'm going to stack everything on top of it as it goes together. I'm also going to try to glue a little bit of things side to side. We're just going to be using some CA glue and just the activator that goes with the CA glue. Stuff's like magic. It goes together really, really easy, really, really quickly. And so that is what I'm gonna do now. I really just want to make sure everything is nice and as lined up as we can get it, or as I can get it. It's going to obviously there's gonna be some post-processing, so there'll be some gap filling and things like that. But if I can get things super well lined up in the beginning, it saves me the trouble later on down the road. So once you get lined up, just hit it with the activator. If you've never used CA glue before, this stuff is awesome. And just like that, there it goes. One piece. Okay. So next I'm going to insert glue into the dowel holes on both sides. You can see there's one there and there's one there. I probably should have put some, oh, actually that doesn't go all the way down, never mind. Yeah, one there. So I'm just gonna put glue in there because I don't want these dowels to be rattling around in there once I get things put together. So I'll be periodically adding glue into these dowel holes and just to make sure that they're stuck in there pretty good. And let me just stick that guy in there. That feels about right. And then this guy goes in there. Now, the one thing when using the CA glue that you do have to be really careful of is just if you spray a part and then you put like another part that's going to go on top of this one, and say I put glue on the bottom of the part that goes on top of this one, this has the accelerant on it now. So once it sticks, it's pretty much just going to like instantly solidify that glue. So just be careful when you're using the CA glue. It's super effective for what it is, but you can get caught in a tough situation sometimes if you don't line things up correctly the first time. So this next piece goes on. This one's going to go right here. Let's see if you guys. Camera angle's okay, yeah. So this one's going to go on right here. I'm going to put some glue on the bottom. And I'm also going to put some glue on the side. And then thread the hole. And do my best to get everything nice and lined up. Okay, I realized that you probably didn't see anything getting built from here up, but it's, like I said, it's just Tetrising. We're just stacking stuff on top, so nothing too crazy. You didn't miss a lot, I promise. Yeah, okay. I think we're good. So here is the blade. I don't know if I can even get a full frame of that. That's just massive. I think this thing's gonna be like 5 foot 10 inches when all said and done. I'm 6'1", so this is gonna be like almost as tall as me. But it is put together, now is glued together and supported by dowels, but now I have to go through and weld it together to give it extra support. I went ahead and measured and cut the metal rod for the handle support in here. My camera battery died while I was doing that, so you missed me using a hacksaw. If that's your special kind of weird, sorry, we'll get you next time. But this is ready to go. It is measured up and ready to go. I just got to glue the handle into it. Same thing that I did with the dowels on the actual big pieces of the sword. I'm just going to drop this into the handle here, put a little glue in there, and then add the top parts of the handle, and then we're going to wedge it into the bottom and glue it. And then after that, we have to reinforce everything. There's a couple ways that you can do plastic welding. I'm going to do a method that requires a soldering iron, and I'm going to do additive welding as well. So I'm actually going to be using some same material that you printed with. So for me, PETG, if you print it in PLA, weld with PLA. And this is going to help fill in some of those gaps that are on the sword. And basically, it's just kind of like bead welding, where we're just going to go through, I'm going to go through and lay this in the gap and then melt it into the gap with the soldering iron, making sure you get good contact on both sides of that seam. And that is going to essentially make it one solid piece, right? So very, very easy to do. I'll show you guys how I do this, and then I'm probably just going to skip through most of it because it's going to be pretty boring. Hopefully you can see these gaps in through here and these seams. I'll zoom this in a little bit in post if I need to, but basically all I'm going to do is take the PETG strand that I have and just kind of lay it into those seams. And then you take the soldering iron, and being really careful not to burn yourself, you just melt them in there. You can also do this with a 3D pen if you don't have a soldering iron. If you have a 3D pen for some reason, that will work to fill in these gaps as well. And you're just going to kind of drag that over, melting that plastic and just creating a plastic to plastic contact. Now, if there weren't big gaps and seams in here, you can kind of just go from one side, melt and drag to the other side to create that bond. But with these big seams, I just wanted to add a little more material there to give it some extra support. All right, it is all welded together. I finished welding, get close-ups here, but finished welding on both sides here. You can see those nice little welding marks. It is ready to go. It is solid, no flex really in there at all. I've also gone through and attached the handle and also welded the seams on that. And then I did do a quick little weld just around the edges here of the handle to make sure that it stays in there nice and neat. And then really it's ready to start post-processing, but I need to make sure that it's not just going to fall apart if I hold it by the handle only. So here we go. Give that a shot. Yes. Look at that. I don't even know if this whole thing's going to fit in the camera. I think it is. It's really bright over there, but oh yeah, that looks good. And then little flex test. I think that's doing pretty good. I feel a little flex right down at the handle, but that's okay. It doesn't seem like it's going to give way, and it's certainly not going to be swung around very much. So this thing's pretty heavy, though. I mean, this is not necessarily a good one-hand hold here. This has got some weight to it, but that feels very solid. This is great. But now that it is all welded together and it is solid, it's time to start smoothing some of this out and getting it ready for painting, basically. So what I need to do first is smooth out some of these lines, these weld lines. As those went on, they kind of gunk up a little bit, and you get these little ridges and valleys all through here. So first thing we're going to do is smooth all that out so that it is nice and ready to be well, post-process, however you want to do that. I'm just going to use this guy. This is an 80 grit sandpaper. For the first sand, I recommend like an 80 to a 120 max grit. You want something that's going to be pretty rough to knock down those initial layer lines, and this should be pretty quick. Just going to go over the whole thing. All right, so the sword is totally ready to do its first coat of primer. It has been sanded, it has been put together. I glued in the little nubby things at the bottom here, the little half circles, which is some CA glue, it's super easy. I made sure to add a little bit of extra reinforcement for the welding, kind of right around the handle, so that holds a little bit stronger there. I don't have room inside to do this, so I will be painting this or priming this outside. As far as primers goes, there's a whole bunch that you can choose from. I've kind of settled on this Seymour PBE stuff. It's really good. Filler primer just comes in gray. The thing that I like about this a lot is that it fills really well, and it's not really any more expensive than like the cheap Rust-Oleum stuff. It doesn't really gunk up sandpaper, but the biggest benefit is that this stuff cures and dries within like 20 to 30 minutes. So you can basically put it on and then 30 minutes later start sanding. So you can get several layers of this on in a single session or just over a few hours instead of having to let it sit, you know, for 4 or 5 hours or overnight every time. So this stuff really speeds up the process. Highly recommend this. All right, so the sword has been primed with its first layer. You saw that outside. Now that it's all nice in one kind of matte finish, we can really see any of the details that are going to need work, where all those little welding lines were and everything like that, because we want to smooth those out so that when we paint it, those aren't showing up. Easiest way to do that is with a filler. I like to use Bondo spot putty. You can use wood filler. There's a bunch of fillers that work. I just go with Bondo spot putty because it's easy. So basically just going to spread that in every little gap and crevice that we see, and then sand the whole thing down. All right, so again, what I'm using for this is just the Bondo spot putty here. And also, generally I would just spread this in with like a finger, probably wear a glove. But these little like makeup sponge things, I got like a whole bunch of them, I think on AliExpress like a couple years ago, like 100 of them for like $5, and I haven't gone through them all. These work really great for spreading this out too. So that's probably what I'm gonna use. It's super, super simple to do. This is not like a complex process at all, and you don't have to worry about getting too much on there or anything because you will be sanding this down again. So you don't want to put it on super thick, but just kind of a glob on your finger or on your sponge, and literally it's just kind of wiping it into the marks, the areas. Just trying to fill it in. Okay, so this is kind of what it'll look like when the Bondo is done drying. You're just gonna have big red stripes everywhere, basically. And this is all essentially just gonna be sanded off. So that's kind of the next step on this, is to break out the sandpaper again. I'm going to be doing this with like a 200 to 220 grit, and that's pretty much the grit that I will stick with for the rest of this project. I might do one final sand with like a 280 to 320, just for like some extra smoothness. Probably not necessary on a project like this, but on helmets and stuff, definitely recommend that. But yeah, so I'm gonna hook up the orbital sander again. This is also going to make kind of a red dust like fly up in the air. So I do recommend wearing a mask, doing this outside in a well-vented area, and or I'm gonna hook up my shop vac to my orbital sander, so it's gonna suck up a lot of that dust as well, but I'm still gonna put on a mask because you definitely don't want Bondo in your lungs. So that is the next step. Basically just repeat that first sanding process. All right, Bondo is sanded down, so the big red lines became thinner red lines, basically. And you can see that we just sanded away all the excess and left everything else to fill in the cracks so that we can get a nice smooth surface on this. There is still some areas where there's a little bit of little bit of gouging and stuff in there that's going to need to be filled in a little bit further. So the next step on this is to wash this off, blow it off, whatever you want to do on something this big. I honestly just use a leaf blower. If you have a can of compressed air or an air compressor, that would probably work really well. You just want to make sure that you get all of the loose debris off of here. And then we're going to add another coat of filler primer on it. And this is basically the rest of the process until you get to paint. It's just going to be filler primer, Bondo in the areas that still need it, or wood filler in the areas that still needs it, sand it, dry it, blow it off, wash it off, filler primer. And you just do that on repeat. So that's why I said I'm going to stick with like the 200 grit-ish sandpaper until we get to the final coat for the paint. Generally, you only have to do this like 2 or 3 times. So it's not like you got to go through this process 6 or 7 times in a row. All right, the sword has been primed 2 more times. So there's a couple small little areas on there that maybe I could spend another time a little bit more fixing up if I really, really wanted to get to 100%. But this is good enough, I think, for me. This is the time in the project where if you are going to go for like that perfect prop, this is where you want to spend that time. After you start putting paint on it and you notice that, oh, maybe I should have spent more time on that one spot, if it's just going to bug you, do it now, right? Fix it now, because it gets a lot harder to fix it after you start throwing paint on it. You got to sand it back down and then repaint it and do all that, and that's a big hassle. So take the time now, get it to exactly where you want it to look. The paint is unlikely to cover anything up. Most of the time, the paint actually accentuates any issues with the prop. So if you are not happy with how it looks here, do another layer, spend some more time with the filler and some more time with the primer. So this is good enough for me though. So I'm going to jump into the final sand on this. I do want it to be nice and smooth. So I'm going to go up a grit. I was using like a 200 grit for everything kind of in between with the filler. And so I'm going to jump up to like a 300 or 320 grit for a final sand on this before paint. All right, this thing is all sanded. It is ready to be painted, but first I have to wash it off really good. You definitely don't want to leave any residue. There's a couple little strings and stuff on here that I want to peel off and pick off as well. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up and ready for paint. I'll probably have to paint it tomorrow just because I'm gonna kind of wipe the whole thing down wet, and I want to make sure that it's super dry when the paint goes on. So I'm just gonna take a couple minutes to clean up those last little details and then show you guys how we're gonna paint it. All right, so the sword is ready to be painted. Luckily, the paint job on this is super easy because you really only have just 2 colors. You have the color of the blade, of the edge of the blade, and then you have everything else is basically black or dark gray gunmetal, kind of depending on what reference photo you use. I'm just gonna keep it simple and go black with that. So I'm gonna use a satin black spray paint. Any brand is fine. And then for the edge of the blade, because I don't want it to be super chromy where it'll show any defects at all in the finishing job, I'm gonna use this Rust-Oleum metallic stuff that's not super chrome, but still gives it a really nice kind of a silvery finish. So I'm gonna spray the blade now, spray the blade first. That way, after this dries, I can tape off just the blade part and then spray everything else with the black color, and pretty easy paint job altogether. So. All right, so we can see that the blade has been painted that shiny silver. I did 2 coats on it just because I wanted it to be nice and even. It looks pretty decent. And the next part is to tape this whole thing off so that we can use the next spray paint color, which is going to be black. Good news is this is probably the easiest prop I've ever taped off because it's really only this angle here, a nice straight line kind of all the way down, and then this little, I don't know, nubby guy is also black, so there's an angle tape kind of through here. But outside of that, super easy. Just covering the painted surface of the blade in tape so that when I spray paint everything else, the blade stays nice and silver. You definitely, when you do the blade, you definitely want to let that dry probably overnight for at least 24 hours before you throw tape on it, because you don't want the tape to lift off the paint if it's not fully set yet. So I use blue painter's tape. Some people use different ones, more expensive ones. This has always worked well for me. Just make sure you put it down well so that you don't get any bleed through. All right, as you can see, it's all taped up. It's taped up on both sides. And remember to tape the edge of the blade here as well. You won't really be hitting that with spray paint, but some overspray could get that too, and it's pretty easy to tape off. So just make sure you cover that as well. And basically, it's just black. I mean, you can do like a dark gray or a gunmetal or something. I went with black. I'm just going to be using Rust-Oleum. This is a satin black. I didn't want it to be super glossy, but I also didn't want it to be matte. So satin or semi-gloss is kind of a nice in-between. And just gonna hit basically the whole thing with the black, and then I'm gonna show you guys what I've done for the little materia, the little gemstones that go in the bottom of it as well, because that can be kind of cool. All right, so the sword is drying to one side that's been spray painted. A note that I didn't say before I spray painted it is make sure that you peel the tape off before it's completely dry. Don't let it cure like overnight. If you can avoid it, give it, you know, an hour maybe, and then start peeling that paint or that tape off while it's wet, and it usually comes off a lot cleaner, okay? But I did want to talk about what I'm doing with the materia, which are like the little orbs that go inside the weapons in Final Fantasy. And I didn't really go through any of this, but these are the materia. This is one of them. It just goes together. I split it in the size slicer. I showed you guys that earlier. But I have basically finished this the exact same way that I did the sword. So the initial sanding, and then a layer of primer filler, and then another sand, and then another layer of primer filler, right? And then I went ahead and I painted these the same metallic color of the blade edge. And the reason I did that is because there's this cool paint that's not really even a paint. It's more of a tint called Metal Cast by Duplicolor, and it comes in a few different colors. I have the blue and the red, and it's basically a tint that is meant to go over like a chrome or a metallic finish, right? So with these being chrome, I can tint one of them blue, and I can tint the other one red, and it will look kind of like a shiny metallic orb, right? So it'll look a little nicer than just spray painting it blue and spray painting it red or green or whatever color you choose. So that's what I'm going to do with these. You'll use that a lot if you make any Iron Man helmets or Magneto helmets or things like that. That's a really cool tool to use to get a kind of a chrome under finish, but with like a blue or whatever color you choose tint on top of it. All right, both sides of this thing have been totally painted, and then it's just time to remove that tape. And if you did everything right, fingers crossed, you get these really nice, crisp lines with no bleed through. And everything just looks exactly how you hope it would. It's looking pretty decent. I mean, there's a couple little areas that, you know, I could have spent more time on, but I spent a lot of time on this project already. You could say if there was a deadline, I'm way behind it. I'm gonna spray the whole thing down with a satin clear coat just to kind of protect the paint finish a little bit so it doesn't scratch off. And then I have the little materia guys here as well. I kind of showed you guys painting these earlier. I did go ahead and put a high gloss clear coat on top of these. Oh, sorry, not on camera. After these dried. And what these are going to do is they kind of go together like this, and then they're going to fit in these holes down here, kind of from either side. So when I put these in, I'll probably put some glue on the bottom of one, and then a little glue on the inside here in the middle, and then just kind of shove them in there like that. And that is essentially how that will look once it's in there. And I don't remember what the colors for the materia mean from the game, the blue versus the red. I don't think these are the ones that you would slot into the Buster Sword, but they're the only two colors that I had, and I think they're gonna look cool. I like blue and red, so, you know, don't crucify me for it. This is what I had, and it's gonna look sick, okay? Would you look at it? It's so big. It's massive. I'm 6'1" for reference, and this thing comes almost up to me. This is like a few inches shorter. So super happy with how it came out. Not 100% perfect, but I love the way it came out. This has been a long-term project that I've been wanting to get done for a while. Finally had the ambition to get it done, and I love it. I love it. It's super big. I don't even know how to get the whole thing in frame here. There we go. I think it looks pretty solid. You can see a couple small seam lines, but nothing too crazy. Good enough I think the Materia looks really good as well on there on both sides. Looks super awesome, nice, vibrant, and glossy. And it's also sturdy enough for one-hand action. I don't know how much it weighs. It's definitely blade heavy, but you can kind of wiggle it around. I don't know that I would run into battle with it or be doing battle drills out in the backyard or anything, but for hanging on a wall, this thing is awesome. I'm so happy that I finally got it done, and I'm thrilled with it. So I hope you guys learned a lot. Have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments. I'm always here to help out you guys with any of your projects that you're working on. And thank you so much for watching. Glad to be back. Take care.